This video covers review 14 over quadratic functions. On the first problem, we're asked to solve for a bunch of stuff just by using the graph given. So remember, if you have a graph given, even if you're given an equation, all you have to do is use this graph given to you to identify the pieces. So the vertex for this one is going to be a maximum. It is always your highest or lowest point. Your vertex is always listed as a point, so this is the point, -2, excuse me, 9. Now the maximum value of h is asking for the maximum, which we just found. Value is asking for your y value. So the y from my vertex, from my maximum value, is 9. My line of symmetry, or my axis of symmetry, is always x equals the x from the vertex, so x equals -2, because that is where you could draw a line or fold your paper and the left side would match the right side. The y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. It's the point 0, a number. This crosses the y-axis at 5, so it is the point 0, 5. The domain of all functions, no matter what they look like, is the double R, which means all real numbers. So you could see it as the double R, or you might see it in words as all real numbers. Your range is always related to your vertex, and range covers y's, so range and value both cover y's. Now for my range, I'm starting at 9 up here, and my graph is going down. So if I compare something lower, 0 is lower than or less than 9. So my range is getting less than 9. My roots are also known as x-intercepts, or the point where it crosses my graph, my parabola crosses the x-axis. So -5 and 1 are my roots. If you are asked to do them as intercepts, make sure you put a 0 and you have 2 points, a 0 for y. You don't have to do that on this one, I'm just letting you know. And then problem 8, ask which function best represents this graph. Now we know, because this looks like an upside down U, that my first term needs to be negative, so C and D could not work. Now, you don't have to narrow it down. It's just taking some time out if you can narrow it down. But once you've narrowed it down, or if you haven't narrowed it down, all you have to do is type in the equations into y equals and see which one looks like the graph that you were given. So for part A, -x² plus 4x plus 5. Well, that doesn't really look like this because that one's more to the right. So let's see if I do B and change that +4 to a -4. Oh, yeah, that looks pretty much like my graph. And you could even follow the calculator steps that we had to graph it or to solve things correctly. So B is going to be my correct answer. Problem 9, ask for the values of x that are a solution to 6x² equals 96. So on all of these, before we can solve, we need an equals 0. So I subtract 96 from both sides. So I'm working with 6x² minus 96 equals 0. When we factor, we take out our GCF. Our GCF here is a 6. When you take it out, remember you divide, so 6 divided by 6 cancels. -96 divided by 6 is 16. From here, I can use factoring with the box, or I can do my difference of squares because I see a first term and a last term and no b term. So the square root of x² is x. The square root of 16 is 4. So I write my factors with 1 positive and 1 negative. And remember, again, you can use the box on this. Now, they did not ask for factors, they asked for solutions. So I take each factor and set it equal to 0 and solve separately. So I subtract 4x equals -4. On the right side, I add 4, so x equals +4. So x can equal positive or negative 4. Problem 10 gives me a factored form and asks for the roots or the solutions or the x-intercepts or the zeros of the related function. Because this is already factored, they've taken work out for us, and all I have to do is take each factor, set it equal to 0, and solve. Remember, these are two different factors, so you solve them separately. So I'm solving for x here. I add 5 to both sides. So 4x equals 5. Divide by 4. And x equals 5/4. And then solve for x here. Move 2 to the other side. 3x equals -2. Divide both sides by 3. X equals -2/3. So anytime you are given the factored form, all you have to do is solve, is set both of them equal to 0 and solve. Problem 11 asks for the positive solution that satisfies 4y squared equals 4y plus 35. So first I need an equal 0, so I can move the 4y squared. So 0 equals -4y squared plus 4y plus 35. Now you have two options. You can solve this using factoring, or we can use the calculator. I prefer the calculator, so I'm going to show you how to do it in the calculator. And if you want to factor, you can pause and do the box, and then press play and make sure you got the same answer. So instead of using the letter y in the calculator, we use x. So I have -4x squared plus 4x plus 35. I look at my graph and I can see two solutions. Note that they have asked us for the positive solution. So on my normal graph, on the x's, these are negatives on the left, positives on the right. So I'm going to click second trace. I'm trying to find the solution x-intercepts root, also known as a 0. So I want option 2. I go to the root or the solution. I go to the solution that I am trying to find. So this is about it. That's apparently as close as I can get. Once I'm there, I slide to the left and press enter. I know that I've pressed enter because I have the arrow, so I go back to where I want to find. I slide to the right, press enter, enter. And so my positive solution is at 3.5. And then if your answers are in a fraction form, you could take that and do 3.5, math, enter, enter, and say this is 3.5 or 7/2. So you can use a calculator anytime they ask you for a solution and they don't give you a graph, or you can factor. We have a linear function k shown on the grid, and they ask us to answer these questions. So problem 12 is asking us about the 0. That idea for 0 has not changed. It is still where it crosses the x-axis. So the 0 is 6. The rate of change, well, I'll do the y-intercept first. The y-intercept is the point 0,4 in the blue. And then my rate of change, I count from point to point. So I go down 4 and to the right 6. And I do a quick check in my calculator to make sure that -4/6 can't be reduced. So alpha y equals -4/6. Oh, and it can. So this is the same thing as -2/3. So remember, anytime you have a fraction, you need to reduce it to the smallest thing, but as long as you can count from point to point, then you'll be fine. 15 gives us the area of a rectangle for x squared plus 4x minus 60, where x is the width. What would be the width of the rectangle that has an area of 897 square feet? So if they are giving us an area here, they tell us the area can be modeled by that. So essentially they're giving us a y value. So what I'm going to do is plug this into my calculator. So in y equals, I'm going to plug in x squared plus 4x minus 60. Now, I am looking for a y value. The only way we can find y values is with the table. So I click second graph. Now, there's a way to do table change, but I'm just going to do the old-fashioned way and search until I get to 897. Now, it's going to take me a while, so one thing I can do is use my answer choices. So like I've already passed 8 and 16 and those weren't there. The next number I have is 29. So if I go to 29, when x is 29, oh look, there's my y. So I'm being given a y value and 4 different x values, and all I'm really looking for is which of these x's has this area of 897 for the y. So again, all you have to do is plug in your function to y equals, go to the table, so second graph, and look at your x values until you get the y value that matches what you've been given, which is 897. We have another quadratic function, g of x, shown. G of x is 2x squared plus 4x minus 8. Answer the following. Now again, all of these can be answered by looking at this graph. Or if you prefer the calculator, this time they do give us the function, so you could plug this into the calculator and follow those steps, but I'm just going to use the picture. So the vertex, in this case, we have a minimum. It is the point -1, -9. The minimum value is just asking for the y value from your vertex. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a 10. So sorry. The axis of symmetry is x equals the x from your vertex. The y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. This one crosses at -8, and it is always written as a point 0, -8. Also remember your y-intercept can also just be that c value from your equation. Domain is always all reals. Range uses the y from my vertex. So I have y and -10. My y is down here. My vertex is down at the bottom. And my function goes up from there, so my y's are getting greater. And then we are asked between two integers, between what two integers are the roots of g of x equals 0. So remember, anytime they give you a function like g of x, they're saying where y equals 0. Y equals 0 on the x-axis, so they're asking between what two integers are the roots located. So this one is between -3 and -4. And this one over here is between 1 and 2. So you're just stating the numbers that it goes between. You don't need to know what the actual number is. You just need to be able to see what two numbers is it between. Problem 23 wants an equation in slope-intercept form that goes through a point and is parallel to the equation given. So the first thing I need to remember is that parallel deals directly with the slope. Parallel lines have the same slope. I then have to remember that if I have a point and a slope, I need to plug into point slope. So this is my x1 and y1. So y minus -6, minus is a plus, equals my slope of 2 that I stole from the original problem. X minus -10 makes it a positive 10. The last thing I need to do is get this in slope-intercept form, which is where you have y equals by itself. So I get rid of my parentheses, 2 times x, 2 times 20. And then my final step is to move 6. Remember, you can only put numbers with numbers. So y equals 2x plus 14 would be my equation. Now, if you're given a multiple choice A, B, C, D answers, you could plug in all of your answer choices and see which one contains that point if you can't remember how to go from point slope or don't know what to do. Problem 24 is the solution set of 8x squared minus 32 equals 0. So solution set, they're asking us to solve all the way for x. First thing I'm going to do is factor out a GCF. Actually, you know what? It would be a lot easier just to put this in the calculator, huh? Because we need to review those steps anyways. So in the calculator, we have 8x squared minus 32 equals 0. So as long as you have an equal 0, any equation you have, you can put into the calculator. I'm going to graph it. And I'm going to find my solutions. My solutions are also known as x-intercepts, which are also known as zeros. So I scroll until I get about where I want. This is about, I'm looking for where it crosses x, so this is as close as I can get. I slide to the left, I hit it 3 times, and I press enter. Go back to what I'm trying to find. Slide to the right, enter, enter. So one of my zeros is at 2. Let's check the other one. Second trace 2. I go to the other, oops, sorry, I went too far. Go to the other one. This is about where I'm trying to find. So I slide to the left, enter, go back. Slide to the right, enter, enter, and my other x-intercept is at -2. Now, you can try to guesstimate these, but I will tell you I've seen problems where it looks like it's at 2 and it's really at 2.122, so you do have to be careful on guessing. You might as well learn those steps. Now, this is just a quick thing over here. Once you get that one, I'm sorry, you can't see what I'm doing. On problem 9 from the beginning, we did this one by factoring, but once you have an equal 0, you could have gone to the calculator on that as well. Okay, so back to page 4. This one, they are asking us to find the solution set of x squared minus 3x plus 1 equals 0. And they have given us square roots, so we know we need to use the quadratic formula. So a is an invisible 1, b is -3, c is +1. On your formula chart, you are given this, so you don't have to write it. I'm just reminding you where these numbers come from. And I'm going to do just a little bit of color coding for B and C. So anything in pink is what goes into your formula. So negative B is -3. Remember, anytime you plug in an A, a B, or a C, it helps to use parentheses so that you can get it right. B is -3. And we square it. -4. A, which is 1, C, which is 1, all over 2 times A, which is 1. So when I simplify, on the top, -3 is a +3, which means I can mark out answer choices A and B because they both had -3s. The only difference between C and D is what's under the square root. Now, I obviously know 2 times 1 is 2. And then to solve what's under the square root, in your calculator, you type what's under the square root without the square root into your calculator. So underneath my square root, I have -3 squared minus 4 times 1 times 1. So under the square root, I should have a 5. Let me tell you, if you got 13 when you were doing this before, you did not put the -3 in parentheses before you squared it. So make sure you are really being aware of that. Problem 26 asks us which graph best represents a quadratic function that has a range of all real numbers less than or equal to 4. So we know our range is our y values. We are looking for something less than or equal to 4. So the first thing I need to know is where is 4? 4 on the y-axis. A is at 4. None of the rest of them are. So less than or equal to 4. Numbers less than or equal to 4 would be 3, 2, 1, 0, -1, -2, -3, anything in the negatives. So I wouldn't be looking for anything bigger than 4. So on B, this is 4, less than is lower than, so B is out. C, this is 4, less than means lower than, so C is out. D, this is 4, less than means lower than, so D is out. A, this is 4, less than means lower than. So A is the only one that has a graph where all of your y values are underneath 4. If it says greater than, then you would just be looking for bigger than 4 or on top of 4. But we don't have that here, so just be aware of that. Okay. Page 5. What are the solutions to 2x squared minus 3x minus 4? If you try to factor this, it will not work. You could try to put it in the calculator, but this is one where we have to use the quadratic formula again. So we have A, B, and C. Remember your quadratic formula. So negative B, which is -3, plus or minus the square root of B, which is -3, squared, minus 4, A, which is 2, C, which is -4, all over 2 times A, which is 2. So we simplify in the front. -3 is a +3. On the bottom, 2 times 2 is 4. And then under the square root, we put in the calculator exactly like we see it. We see -3 squared minus 4 times 2 times -4, which is 41. Remember that you do not put the square root into the calculator. You simply figure out what goes under the square root and leave that. Problem 28 says there are 12 people on a jury. There are 4 more men than women. If W is women and M is men, write a system that could be used to find the number of women on the jury. So if there are 12 people total, we have men and women total. That equals 12. Remember, once you use a number with systems, you can't use it again. So the only other information we have is that there are 4 more men than women. There are more men, so men goes outside. 4 more than means plus. Women would be W plus 4 or 4 plus W. Problem 29 asked me to write a factored expression that is equivalent to 4x squared minus 24x plus 36. And they give us a hint that this is a perfect square trinomial, but if you don't remember how to do that, we could just use the box. So for this, we could take a 2 out of all of my factors. Remember, when you take it out, you divide it. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. -24 divided by 2 is -12. And 36 divided by 2 is 18. From here, I use the box. So 2x squared plus 18. My product is 36x squared. My sum is -12x. So I use my calculator. In y equals, I put 36 divided by x. So for the calculator, I put the product in y equals. and I search for the sum in my table. Now, I need my sum to be negative, and I'm noticing a bunch of positive numbers, so I'm going to go up and look in the negatives. So negative 2, negative 18 is not enough. Negative 3, negative 12, not enough. Negative 4, negative 9 is negative 13. Close, decimal, decimal. Oh, negative 6 and negative 6. Remember, whatever you see in the calculator is what you put on your paper. So back to my paper, I now take out my GCFs. So 2x squared and negative 6 share a 2. I'm sorry, those need x's. Share a 2 and an x. Negative 6x and 18 share a negative 6. 2x squared and negative 6x share a 2 and an x. Negative 6x and 18 share a negative 6. So there's my perfect square trinomial. So I have a GCF of 2 and then 2x minus 6 squared. Problem 30. What are the factors that satisfy the expression 3x cubed plus 24x squared plus 21x? These all share a 3 and an x. So I will take a 3x out of all of them. Remember that when you take it out, you divide. So this would be x squared. 24 divided by 3 is 8x. And then 7, my x's cancel. I use the box. So x squared plus 7, my product is 7x squared. My sum is 8x. So in y equals, I put 7 divided by x. And I am looking for a positive 8. 1 plus 7 would get me a positive 8. And I take out my GCFs, so x squared and 7x share an x. 1x and 7 share L1. X squared and x share an x. 7x and 7 share a 7. So GCF out front, and then x plus 1, x plus 7. Ask what inequality would represent the domain. Remember, we know Dr. XY, so domain is my x's. My x's go left to right. So my x is a negative 5 on the left side. With an open bubble, we just put an inequality, no line. And then it goes all the way out to a positive 2. At a positive 2, there is a closed bubble, so there would be a line under the inequality. Range is your y's, so range goes from negative 2 to 5. At negative 2, there is an open bubble. Up at the top at 5, there is a closed bubble. This is problem 33. Oh, 33 and 34. If f of x equals 2x squared minus 8, then answer the following. So anytime we are given something like this and we want to know an x value, remember we can put it in y equals. So 2x squared minus 8 goes into y equals. I can go look at the table, or I can do a value like we did from a graph. Remember that x is always inside, so here they're telling us x is negative 4 and they want to know y. When x is negative 4, y is 24. 34 also has an x value. They're saying x is 2, so on my calculator, when x is 2, y is 0, which would mean that when x is 2, that is a solution to the graph. 35 asks me for the solution to this, so I need to distribute to get rid of my parentheses. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times negative x is negative 2x. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. From here, I combine like terms. So on the left side, negative 2x stays. 8 plus 3 is 11. On the right side, 3x stays. Negative 18 minus 11 is negative 29. I'm now ready to move an x to one side and numbers to the other. So 11 equals 5x minus 29. I now move the 29 to the other side because I'm trying to get x by itself. So 40 equals 5x. Divide by 5, and x equals 8. Problem 36, we are given a table and they ask us what the linear function is represented from the table. What is the rate of change? So anytime we're given a table, we need to go to Stat Edit. So we have negative 3, 3, and 9 for the x's. And then negative 10, 14, and 30. Oh, hello. 14 and 38 for the y's. Stat Calc 4, enter, enter, enter until you get to here. My rate of change is my a value, which is 4.